Everybody good?
Oh yeah, sure.
Good evening. This meeting is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Borland? Here. Mrs. Bullock?
Here.
Mrs. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Street? Mrs. Van Mater? Here.
Thank you. Well, this evening we don't have any scouts in attendance, so I would ask everyone to please rise and we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Haddad, are there any addendums to the agenda?
There were updates to the agenda and the board was notified of these earlier today.
Thank you. Members of the board, are there any items you wish to move from either the superintendent's consent agenda or the board's consent agenda? Are there any items to be added to the agenda?
Mrs. Johnson, with the permission of the board, I would request, because we are hearing, because we're going to take a final vote tonight on New Summit Charter School application, and because we have received some new information regarding their application in the meantime since the last board meeting, I'd like to ask the board's permission to move public comment, which is item 7A, move it up so that it immediately follows the item we're on. In other words, so the public comment would precede the New Summit Charter School application, in case there are any members of the public who would like to speak on that. I also would like the board's permission to move up item 12A, which is new course proposals from several of our high schools. I'd like to move that to follow item 9A, items pulled from consent agenda, again, because there may be people here to answer questions for the board, and often our E1.1 monitoring report takes 45 minutes to an hour.
Very good. Is there a second?
Sorry.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Borland?
Aye.
Mrs. Bullock?
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Van Mater? Aye.
Okay, then, so we will now move to item 5, the new Summit Charter School application, and under item 5A.
Public comment, sorry.
Oh, so sorry. All right, now we will have public comment. Thank you.
Mrs. Johnson, as a point of order, may I also suggest, because we just moved this, and I apologize for making this late request. I didn't notice until today that public comment followed this one, or we could have moved it sooner. But I'd just like to suggest that if there are any, typically members of the public are required, there's a sign-up sheet over there. If there are people who did not sign up and who still want to speak, I'd like to request that we could still accommodate them.
Well, I think it's a very good suggestion. Would anyone like to take advantage? Perfection. So I'm not on my, I guess I should flip to the public comments section. So Mrs. Cortez, do we have anyone signed up to speak to the board this evening?
We do. We have 7 individuals.
Very good. At this time, we welcome any members of the public who would like to address the board to do so. Thank you for being here tonight. In the interest of respecting the time of all who are present, speakers are to limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less. All speakers will be notified of the remaining time via the mounted monitors behind the dais. When 30 seconds are remaining, the timer will turn yellow and then red when the time has ended. Supplemental written materials are welcome. Please hand the material to Mr. Grady, who is seated to the right of the podium, and he will deliver it to the board secretary. We greatly value all comments from the public, but in order to adhere to board policy and accomplish the work already on the agenda, the board will not respond this evening.
The first speaker is Pam Walker.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I just have 2 points I'd like to make. First off, I think New Summit is important because it is or can occupy a niche that we have right now as vacant, I believe, in the area, and that's combining those time-tested pieces of information, classical books, literature, philosophy, but it's bringing it into the contemporary or postmodern era by introducing technology and innovation. And so I think it's really important that it provides a bridge from that which has stood the test of time to that which will come in the future for our children. So I think it provides a lovely satisfaction of that niche that's open right now. And the next point I'd like to make is that it is needed. There's a population within the district that isn't having its needs fully met, and by that I mean the waiting list that we see at the other charter schools. I see that as evidence that there is a need and a desire within the population, and I'd just like to reinforce that as I speak to the board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The second speaker is Robert Warner.
Good evening. So my wife Becca wasn't able to be here tonight, and she wanted to write some stuff down for me to read for you guys. So I'm going to read this, what she wrote. Greetings, my name is Becca Warner, and I am currently homeschooling mom of 2 school-age kids, plus a toddler. I wrote this letter for my husband to read to you because I cannot make it tonight to the board meeting. But I wanted you to know why our family, and I believe many other families in Colorado Springs, need Summit Charter Academy in our community. One of the most important reasons for this school, in my opinion, is for a beautiful, wonderful little girl named Eden. She is our oldest daughter, and she turns 10 in 2 weeks. Eden is a kind and generous and such a delight to everyone she meets. She loves school and especially thrives in creative environments, where there are people surrounding her that support her and you see Eden has dyslexia. She is bright and possibly the hardest worker I've ever met. As her parents, we have always wanted our little girl to succeed in life. So we did everything in our power to get her a kindergarten seat in fall of 2011 at what we were told was the best school in town, the Classical Academy. Kindergarten went fine despite some minor hiccups, but by the first month of first grade, one of Eden's favorite places to be, school, was getting more and more difficult for her. By the end of first grade, we knew that TCA wasn't the right fit for our family, but we didn't know exactly why. Don't get me wrong, TCA is a wonderful school for lots of kids, but for those that struggle with keeping up with the rigorous educational standards, it can rob them of the joy of learning. Being inexperienced at what to expect from a beginning reader, we also didn't discover Eden's dyslexia until very late in her second grade year. As the parents of a child with an obstacle to learning, like most other kids her age do, we feel as if TCA failed to identify Eden's need, direct us to the appropriate resources. So again, this is why we need new Summer Charter Academy. The vision of the board is for this school to ensure that every child succeeds by getting a rounded education. They are committed to assessing for the meetings of needs of kids with all types and needs and abilities. And it is exactly what we have been waiting for the past 3 years. Eden is just one reason, although a very special reason in our opinion, for your vote yes for this school. I can go on about the ways this school will also serve our son and our youngest daughter, but I know time is so short. So with that said, we appreciate your consideration for New Summit, and we implore you to grant the charter status. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Rick Van Meeren.
I'm Rick Van Meeren, and I'm here to speak for the parents that I've been talking to in the last, gosh, when did we start working on this thing? It's been a while. We have met so many wonderful people through this process, and we have so many stories like what Robert just shared. There are so many families that have not been able to find what they needed, whether it be from neighborhood schools or from other charter schools, or being able to provide it themselves for homeschools. So I just, on behalf of the Warners and all these other great families that are here. I just want to ask for your yes vote tonight for the parents.
Okay, and now we have Amy Tuning.
Hi. I just wanted to come up here and tell you, I'm a mom of 5 kids, and so this is something that's really exciting for me. The new school site is about 2 blocks from our house, which is amazing since I have 2 kids in school age. One is at TCA North, which is about a 20-minute drive on a good day, and then at Frontier, another academy or school district 20. So I'm super excited about having the chance to have all my kids at the same school and not having to make that commute since they both get out at the same time. I love that this charter school will be getting back to the basics and the fundamentals and the classics and just more of a traditional, but also bringing in some of the more modern things like technology. They just won't put an emphasis on it. I love that learning and character are both highly valued at this school. For me, with 5 kids, your character says a lot, especially when you're all close together, and so that is huge for me. Also learning at your own pace. I know a lot of kids learn differently and at different places. Some are fast, some are slow. And that New Summit has promised to take both of those into account. Yeah, and I think that's it. I think I got all my bullet points. So thank you so much, and please vote yes.
Thank you.
Next is Kendra Kendall.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. I have 3 kids, and I've, in the past, in previous places we lived, had them at charter schools in Colorado Springs, and I've also homeschooled for a year. And currently 2 of my kids are attending District 20 schools. And so I've kind of run the gamut and seen what's out there, and I do think there's a huge demand for different curricula than is being offered in most schools. And I'm not entirely satisfied with the schools they're attending at the moment, and it is no reflection on the people. I am not criticizing District 20 for effort. We have amazing teachers and amazing people, but I see when I talk to people and out in the community that people are wanting different curricula options for their children. And I think it's important that you meet the needs and demands of your constituency and respond to the parents who are out there that are wanting this. Everything in the curricula that have been chosen for New Summit or that are possibilities are all time tested. We've stood the test of time. I've just really appreciate the opportunity for different students to get different educational opportunities that are right for them. And I think it's great for our society as a whole that not every child have the exact same school experience. I think it's great for people to have learned different things in different environments and come together and share that knowledge. So just because you have lots of great schools that are working well doesn't mean that they should all be this cookie cutter model. We need to have differences, and some parents and some children will respond different and better to other opportunities. And I also just want to point out that from what I've seen, that the way that New Summit's been organized and those that have put it together seem like they've really done their homework. They put in countless hours, and so many parents have. And it just shows me that people are wanting this so much that they've given their best for it. So thank you so much for listening to my comments, and please vote yes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Shannon Rash.
I'll make this very short. I only have one of my 4 children that will be able to go to New Summit Charter, which kind of is disappointing, but very exciting at the same time. My daughter, she's in a District 20 school right now, and all my kids are. I doesn't have the opportunity at the school that she's at to work to her. She kind of gets, she's in the middle, so she kind of doesn't get what she needs. She's not failing, but she's not super smart, so she's just kind of floating. And I really look forward to the opportunity that New Summit offers her, that with different groups, and that will meet her needs, and hopefully she'll blossom. The existing board that's put this all together really truly care about our children in this community, and I think that the opportunity that New Summit offers our community is amazing, and I just ask that you vote yes.
Thank you.
Our final speaker is, I hope I get your name right, is Wendy Gamboa.
Lowering the podium. Yes, I'm Wendy Gamboa. I have 3 kids. My oldest is in Timberview. I have one in elementary and one in pre-K. I would just like to say that my daughter at Timberview, when we were in California, we were stationed in California, she has dyslexia and she also has audio processing. And I fought and fought and fought to get her some help. Day 1 we came here, her file had been read, they were offering her a 504. It was amazing. So her experience has been absolutely amazing, and I can't say enough good about Timberview Middle School. My son's experience has been very, very different. He had the same school, or the same teacher in kindergarten and first grade. He was a 60-year-old man. He was a triathlete. He did Ironman contests. He really believed a lot of physical things in school. He integrated some of that. He read the classics to the kids. They got to act some of them out. Have you ever seen a bunch of kids doing pirates with pool toys and all kinds of stuff? It was amazing. Just everything he did. He would go fishing and bring the fish back and have the kids dissect them and chart them and all kinds of amazing things. And my son loved it. Since being here, I've seen him go from loving school to very slowly throwing himself on the floor and crying that he doesn't want to go. The more I've learned about this curriculum, the more I have realized that it is more hands-on, which is what he needed. His teacher's name was Mr. Markwell, and we used to joke all the time, everybody needs a Mr. Markwell. Everybody needs a Mr. Markwell. And as I've learned more and talked to educators, talked to people who know this curriculum, I realized that a little bit of Mr. Markwell is already built in there. So you don't have to wait for that one fantastic teacher who has been teaching for a long time and figured all these little pieces. It's already there. So I would just like to ask you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We appreciate all of the comments and certainly value them. So we're going to move forward to item 5A, supplemental material from New Summit Charter Academy. As you all probably will recall, and those who are attending, we've already held 2 public hearings in regard to New Summit's applications. And you'll also probably recall that the day before our second public hearing, New Summit received news from the CDE in regard to their grant application. Since then, we asked for supplemental information, which was provided and was attached in the board packet. I'd like to allow those on the board who may have any questions regarding that supplemental material to pose them now. We can have a little discussion on just that portion of it before we move forward to the vote.
All I was going to ask was a general question. I was going to ask if perhaps Dr. Valley or someone could step up and just discuss the piece because we just received it at 3:30 this afternoon, so I just kind of like to have it framed a little bit for me about what the.
I'm going to defer to Aaron because Aaron's going to go to work on the budget.
Okay, very good.
Good evening. Sorry, I just came from a UCCS thing and got lots of information over here, and so it's all falling out of my folio. They gave me this giant USB that doesn't, so I apologize. So what would you like, what changed on the budget? Are you
What
talking about the
changed?
email this afternoon that came through?
The one that came in.
Yes, it was
3:30.
my understanding that prior to today, what we'd seen in the board packet talked about deferred salary for a principal. Now there was one that came in this afternoon, and I kind of like to understand the differences and understand your vision for the whole thing. And you please feel free to speak to what you put in the board packet prior to today too, if that helps.
Absolutely. So I will say, related to the board packet that was sent this afternoon, I was doing some last minute looking over the budgets, the revised budgets. It's been a lot of my life the past few weeks. And I realized that we had left the deferred payment, or the deferred salary for the principal in the budget, and we initially talked about that, but decided after consulting with our attorney and looking at other requirements, and we decided that that was not the way we wanted to go. And so that was a mistake that had been left in the board packet when we sent the budget, I believe that was earlier this month. And so what our plan is to have that position be more on a voluntary basis for year zero, if you will, until we actually start getting revenue. And then what we would look at is an increased, a little bit higher salary through year one and year two to make up for any, well, not to make up for, but to encourage them to stick with us and not just put in a lot of legwork, and sort of as an incentive to stick with us through a couple years. So we bumped that salary over the first 2 years once we actually had funding come through. Now, that's subject to change if the CCSP grant does come through for us, or if we have other grant funding come through. We have applied for our 501c3 status, and so that'll open up some other grant opportunities for us that we are currently seeking. And we'll keep you guys apprised of that as we continue forward. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Just trying to determine what the employment status of the principal was and during what period. So the principal, you're anticipating bringing a principal on when?
We would talk, or we've talked about bringing a principal on kind of springish, late spring probably, and helping to help us make some of the decisions. I mean, we're not educators, right? So help us make some of the decisions that need to be made. And so it'd be sort of a voluntary basis at that point. Just trying to get things going until we start getting revenue coming in. But it would be 2-3 months probably over the spring and summer.
Okay, and then the principal would be on the payroll when?
Starting whenever we get the funding starting to come through that we could pay them.
Okay.
So that'd be year one.
Okay, so after school starts?
Right.
Or, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mrs. Bullock.
I was going to ask the same question, but I do have an additional question. Did you say CCSPD? What did you say, grant? Is that the CDE grant?
Yeah, that was a CDE grant. It's
Okay.
the CCSP grant through the CDE.
Okay.
So we're actually still in conversation with them about a potential reconsideration of the grant. There was a really, really low acceptance rate. They had right around 50% of their applications actually get accepted this year, and so it's a really low acceptance rate, much lower than previous years. So we're talking with them about reconsideration.
Okay. And what other sources have you been looking at as well?
We've been working with no wait lists to identify other grant opportunities. We've had some discussions, and we put some of those discussions on hold until end of December, early January. He's got some meetings that are scheduled. I don't remember who it was with right off the top of my head. Right.
So how long would it take you to find out if you got some additional funding?
I don't know when we'd find out. I mean, we have a meeting that we're trying to get pinned down with the CDE to over that. This, as much as I know right now, is that we've been emailing back and forth, but we haven't had a chance to sit down and have a face-to-face. And they're not willing to commit to anything until we have a sit-down and face-to-face. So that's our current status.
Mrs. Van Meter?
I'd like to ask a follow-on to that then. When the CDE grant, I'm not completely familiar, and either you or perhaps Mr. Gregory could help me with this, but is that grant, in other words, if they don't overturn this, is that a grant that you could apply for then in your second year, or is it only for the first year and once you've started the school?
When we got our notice in our conversations, they've invited us to apply for next year's grant, so.
Okay. So it's a possibility for subsequent years, but we would not know until the same time frame.
Correct.
Essentially, next year.
Correct.
So you'd already have to be in process
We would.
for your first year.
We would be, and I know it's a tight budget, but I mean, the budget that we have is more than viable for year one. And our revenue stream from our projections have been pretty conservative, especially considering the rate of interest forms that we've had filled out. We're up over 10% from what we were in our last meeting, so we're up, I don't remember what the final count was, I saw over 440 earlier today. And so, I mean, those numbers are continuing to climb, and our projections that we've made budget-wise have changed a little bit according to that. We've already outsold our kindergartens even from the expansion that we had submitted in our previous budget revision, where we had bumped it up to 4-round kindergarten. We've already outsold the 4 rounds. So we're getting a lot of interest, and like I said, the revised budget that we sent shows a viability for year one, even without the CDE grant. So as much of it as it's sort of a bummer not to have it, we've been able to rework some stuff. We've worked with our property management company to kind of structure some of our fixtures and stuff, which was one of the biggest expenses that we had coming from the CDE grant, that they will help us finance some of that cost so that we're not stuck. So the revisions that we've made have been more than enough to make us viable through year one and get extra funding or revenue coming through in year 2.
Mrs. Bullock? Mr. Van Wieren, I believe you were part of starting up TCA, or you just?
We were actually on
The original.
organizing committee.
So,
We weren't in the
so explain to me, how do charter schools get the funding to start? Because, I mean, we don't get money, the charter school would get money from us, right? Once we get it from the state, and we wouldn't get it until, what, February, August, September?
Funding for the school district starts in July for next fiscal year.
Oh.
But then until the students aren't counted, a new student at a charter school wouldn't be counted until October.
So they wouldn't get any money until October?
That would be part of the contract that would be negotiated, but no earlier for sure than July.
Okay, so then explain to me, how do charter schools start? Because they do.
Yes, they do. And it's not the same with any one of them. At TCA, honestly, some of the founders chipped in out of their own pockets. We had some deep pocket founding families when TCA was getting on. And they hired the principal in advance of the school year. And she was actually salaried, through donations that they had in fact made as founding families. We are not in that situation ourselves, so we are not putting that in our projections. But we do have some extremely motivated parents and a 501(c)(3) application in where we believe we will be able to raise some money both for the marketing funds that it takes to kind of finish out the enrollment itself, and also probably to get some funding for that principal. We've not put it in the budget. We've tried to keep those numbers extremely conservative. We're not trying to bank on things that we don't think have a high probability. When Erin says we've already outsold our capacity on kindergarten, we literally have more kids already signed up than what we have in the budget that we've submitted to you, the revised budget. So, we're trying to be very conservative with this stuff. We believe that upon an approval, we will have another whole flood of interest come in, because people are a lot more interested in schools that actually have been approved than schools that haven't. Talked to a gentleman just this afternoon that was looking to transfer 2 of his kids. He wants to know when we get approved. He doesn't want to sign up his kids until we've gotten approval. Once approved, though, there's a whole variety of ways that that early money comes in. But a line of credit, honestly, is one thing that we are looking at for some of that short-term bridge when we get into this. And again, the contract itself is when I think we should be dealing with some of the nits and grits of this. But we believe that we are going to have a very solid enrollment for this school. We believe that that enrollment by itself is going to enable us to actually pay for things as they become due. Our landlord, North Star Commercial Partners, has been very gracious in terms of how they've approached this, and so our whole lease arrangement is a stepped-up lease arrangement. Even the arrangement on the parking area and the gymnasium area for using the hockey arena is a stepped-up agreement where we actually have no payment due whatsoever until November. And so we've tried to set up some of the big nut items so that we're not paying for them any quicker than we have to, so that we don't end up in this whole cash flow bind that could otherwise result.
I have a question, and Mr. Valley, you don't have to answer all these, even though you did a noble job. But you mentioned that, well, you mentioned in regard to the CDE, but as far as you know, and the other individuals involved, there is no firm